my entire immediate family was gone. My grandparents, everyone's gone. And I, not having any siblings, it's definitely been challenging. I'm so grateful for my husband. I have a good support system of friends and colleagues, but I just felt alone.
My mom has stage 4 cancer in her bones and in her breast. My dad's disease was 15 years, he died of ALS. I made a podcast about death, seemed like the thing to do. And if you're sad by all of this, well, you're gonna die too. Don't stop, it's the weekend. Hold on to whatever you can, 'cause life is hard. Street lights are the only light in my heart. Okay, I don't know what just happened. The bad songs will continue. They will just continue. That's all I have to say about that. Happy weekend. If it's the weekend when you are listening, super excited to talk about some yummy yum bars today. Quick tidbit, your girl cut off her hair. A foot of hair has been removed from my head. Not saying you gotta check the gram, just saying you could check the gram. Not saying you have to check the gram, just saying it is an option. I posted a pic at Chelsea. Who else? My Instagram is at Chelsea. Who else? Always wanted to donate it. It was a good time with COVID / there's never a good time, but this is the time that I chose, and more later on how and why I decided to do that and in honor of whom. Today, I am so excited to speak with Ashley Nickelsen of BTR Bars. She is the founder and chief snack officer of BTR Bars, which stands for Bold, Tenacious, and Resilient. Ashley started the company in honor of her parents, determined to pass on their legacy and inspire the world. As their caretaker and working full-time, Ashley was constantly on the go, inhaling so-called better-for-you bars and bites high in sugar. Ashley craved a snack with a BTR ingredient profile that also served a functional purpose, and that is how BTR Bar was born. It's always fascinating to speak with people that start their own companies. Ashley is no exception, and she lost both of her parents to cancer, and we will discuss those stories today as well. Special shout out to anyone listening who has lost both of their parents. That is extra difficult. Ashley, you're awesome. I know you've been listening to the podcast. I super appreciate you. I see you. I hear you. Can't wait to get a little bevy one day in person because, just zooming it up like it's my job, just like zooming it up, just like that is what we do. If you like what you hear and you want a little taste, you can use discount code LAUGHTER10 for 10% off these bars. You can go to eatbtrbar.com/discount/laughter10. All right, let's do this thing, and I'll see you on the other side. Well, thank you so much, Ashley, for coming on. I am so excited to sit here with you. But for new listeners, I would love to hear more about you. If you don't mind explaining a little bit about your upbringing, celebrating your parents today, and how that inspired your fantastic bar company.
Oh my goodness, Chelsea, I am so excited to be here. I have been listening to so many episodes. I'm such a big fan of the show. And literally I cry, I laugh. I'm like, I really should do that. I love it so much. So I'm so excited to be here today as well. And yeah, I'll dive right in. So I'll actually start with the company's name is BTR, and it means be bold, tenacious, and resilient, which was actually my parents' personal mantra when I was growing up. And when I was a child, they would say it over and over again, like the day, taking me to kindergarten, in high school. It's just like, I took it for granted, right? Like, I think a lot of these cute little mantras and sayings, and they were full of them. I don't know if I necessarily took them all for granted, but that one, be bold, tenacious, and resilient, I can hear them saying it. And it's so interesting because when they got sick, I just knew that I needed to keep that phrase with me and hold on to it for forever. And when I decided to start the company, it just so naturally aligned that BTR also a play on the word better. So that because they are better for you bars, it worked. And it's really, when people call them better bars, I'm like, it is better bar, but I want you to know that it's BTR because it stands for something. And yeah, it literally infused every aspect of my parents being into the company. I feel them with me all the time. My upbringing, I was an only child. So my parents and we were best friends. So everything together, my friends, they were second parents. It was just such an incredible friendship. And I felt like they were my siblings or best friends. And yeah, and it was, really, and we'll get into it. It's been a crazy 5 years, just literally a roller coaster, and I just feel so honored to be able to, decided to take the plunge and start a company. And literally every day I wake up for them, and I hope they're watching, and I'm making them proud.
Wow, that is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing your story. And I love that you're able to take their mantra and bring it into this company. I have so many questions about your company and your bars, and I've got to try them, and they are fantastic. So that I'm so excited to jump into. First, one of the first questions that I ask everybody is about your goldfish moment. And that is the first time you've thought about or conceptualized death in some way. Is there something that comes to mind surrounding death in your childhood? Goldfish moment. Did your goldfish die? Goldfish moment. Did it make you cry?
Yes. So I thought about this a lot because, like I said, I've been listening to every episode. And I think my goldfish moment was actually when my uncle passed. I was in fifth grade. So this was probably the youngest I was exposed to death. And I went to Catholic school. So I went to Catholic school for 9 years. So, you go to church every week, and, my family was religious, spiritual. I'm quite spiritual. And it was just my uncle, we were close. It wasn't an immediate family, but it was something that I took notice to, where I was like, okay, you're here, and then you're not. And it was just, there was a very distinct line. And I remember sitting with my father and my cousin, who was like a brother to me, and we were just kind of looking up at the clouds, and it was such a beautiful sunny day, the day that he had passed. And we were like, oh, okay, it's okay, he's in heaven. And I think having this, being in Catholic school for so many years, I think that's the logical thought. But I was always the person that was thinking more. So, what happens to the soul? Where? And so I was thinking about this in fifth grade. So I'd always had a lot of questions around death and dying and what happens. And I think that this was just my first exposure to it. But it still seemed untouchable. So, growing up, my family, we had a lot of money problems, and that was it really. My father worked 3 jobs, and my mom dedicated her life, literally stayed at home with me, took care of me, my friends, drove us everywhere. And yeah, I mean, that was it. My father was like, okay, we have so much to be grateful for in life, because we have our health, and that's it. It doesn't matter. We have some money problems. It is what it is. Like, we live in a small house. It's okay, because we're together and we have our health. And I always remembered this. And then as I got older, so my mom was first diagnosed in my mid 20s, and it completely just changed our lives, because now it wasn't okay, we have money problems. It was something so much bigger than that. And my mom, and I can go into the whole diagnosis story. It was not only it changed our lives, my mom was misdiagnosed for probably about a year.
Wow.
And by the time they found it's a leiomyosarcoma, which is just so rare. And it's basically a fibroid that turned malignant. And my gynecologist at the time basically told my mom, oh, you can get a hysterectomy if you want, but it's not necessary. And but who wants to go through this procedure that takes 6 months to recover from? My mom was like, I don't know, does it have anything to do with it? He was like, no, it doesn't. So she was misdiagnosed, and by the time they found it, we had a really, really great oncologist, but the worst bedside manner on the
Mm.
face of the planet. I mean, in plain English, he was a dick. And we had such trouble. He literally sat us down, and we had never, besides, my grandfather had passed and my uncle had passed. But before that, we just didn't know sickness in the same way. And my mom had been sick for a while, losing weight. And, we were afraid that it might be cancer, but we were like, this just doesn't make any sense. Like, she went for all these tests, she had spinal taps, everything for a year. And he sat us down and said, yeah, you have stage 5 cancer. You're going to die in about 6 months. And I remember that moment so clearly. We were sitting in his office in NYU Medical, because my family, I grew up in New York City. I went to NYU, and I was just like, this is impossible. Like, I just was in so much denial. And I think my mom was too, but also I think she felt validated, because she was feeling so sick for so many months.
Mm.
No one could figure it out. And she was like, okay, now what's the plan? What do I do? And it was just just such a terrible experience. She was sick for so long previously, and then she passed within 9 months. So we didn't even really have a, a time to really even push super hard. So if that makes sense, where, she went for chemo, she went for radiation, she did everything possible. And I think we were just in such denial, like this can't be happening.
Mm.
And yeah, and it, 9 months later, she had passed, and we were with her every single day. So my mom didn't like to stay in the hospital by herself. So I would sleep in the hospital. We were just, one of those families that just went all in, and spent every moment in the hospital that she was in the hospital, and then every moment I taking care of her, and I was working full time, so I tried to bring my work and just be in bed and watch. I remember we would binge watch all these different shows on Netflix, and that's really Say Yes to the Dress was one of those shows. That's what we did. That's really what we spent the 9 months doing, and it was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. But I was able to have those moments with her, and that was my like first real shaking experience with death. And then less than 2 years later, my father was diagnosed with stage 5 cancer, stage 5 appendiceal cancer, which also impacts 0.1% of the population.
Wow.
And it's after my mom passed, I really closed myself off to the world. It was just a bad time. I didn't want to talk to my friends. Ironically, this is actually about the time I met my husband, and he was probably the only person that I let in. And that's how I knew. I was like, okay, he came in my life at this time for a reason. And for some reason I trusted him, even though I just felt so cold. And this was before I started the company. I'd been making these recipes to bring to my mom in the hospital, to bring to myself, the doctors, the nurses, and whatnot. You get so close to all the people that are along this journey with you. And, in the back of my head, I was like, okay, maybe I could do something with this, but I completely tabled everything. My full-time job, I was working in education, in higher education. I was living in the dorms with students. And it was about this time when my mom passed that I was like, I cannot do this for the rest of my life. I just cannot listen to roommate problems. I don't like my roommate. It's just all of these things were irritating me because I had gone through this tragic event.
And you were in your mid-20s at this time when you were working?
Mid-20s.
Okay,
yep.
Great. Thank you for sharing some of this timeline. And that sounds extremely challenging that you faced these double experiences, which not everyone does. Can you speak a little bit about what it was like when you found out the news about your dad, specifically giving advice to those who are finding out a diagnosis for the second time?
Yeah, it was literally remember the moment. You just know when the doctor, basically my father went under surgery and they thought it was a gallbladder that was infected. And when they went to do the surgery, they basically opened him up, saw that he had this appendiceal cancer that had spread to his peritoneal lining. And when the surgeon walked out to the waiting room, and it was just me at this point. So my husband was working. I felt like I had no one. So I just felt so lonely. I was praying to my mom, and, I felt her presence, but I saw the surgeon's face and I just knew immediately that it was cancer, and I knew it was bad. I could just tell by his face. And I literally just dread and just falling to the floor. Like these are the feelings that, just overcame my body. And the surgeon actually didn't want to tell my father. And he thought that it would be best if I told my father the news. And I said, okay, I'm going to do it. And my cousin had actually met me at the hospital at that point, and he couldn't even go into the operating room. And I had to tell my father that he was dying. And
Wow.
these are the things that they stay with you. They stay with you. And both my mom and my dad, I was in the room when they both passed. I would not leave their side. I sang to them, told them how much I loved them, prayed with them. And then when they couldn't speak anymore, I continued singing to them. Those are moments that stay with you. And I'm so, as traumatizing as they are, they're so beautiful. And that's probably a piece of advice. If people feel comfortable doing and saying everything that you want, is so critical when you know it's coming to the end. And I think with my mom, I was much more in denial, but with my father, I was so prepared. So in his last couple days, while he was still functioning and could speak, I would tell him how much I loved him, but I would record him saying back how much he loves me. I
Wow.
wish I did that with my mom. Just didn't think about it in the same way. He's still in denial, but with my father, I was recognizing the same symptoms and the same signs, and I just knew I wanted to capture those moments. And I have them. And I went back into my emails, and I saved all of, and I forwarded all of the emails that my father wrote to me. It just, he always wrote every night when he would come back from, he worked in Manhattan and we lived in Staten Island, and he would, write on the Staten Island ferry all these beautiful emails to me, and literally every night. And I kept the majority of them, but I made sure to forward them to my inbox. So I would, have them saved so I could, read them over and over again. And I still have 3 unopened emails from him that I just reference all the time and then mark them as unread so I can go back and read them for motivation. So I think, making sure that you take it in, and it, as painful and heart throbbing as it is, try to say everything that you can and feel everything that you can, and be there until the end.
Mm. Thank you so much for that. That's such a beautiful perspective. And I appreciate your honesty in how like difficult it was. And yet you still had the strength to use what you learned, for better, lack of better words, with your mom's experiences to channel that for your dad's. And I think that a lot of people probably don't think to do the email voicemail thing. I certainly didn't. So I hope someone can listen to this and just go for it. That's really beautiful. Would you say, before we get into BTR Bar Realness Times, would you say there is something that sticks out as different about the experiences of your parents? And is there a commonality that comes to mind?
I think that's such a good question. I see more commonalities than actually differences. I think, watching, both of them had cancer, and watching cancer just degrade the body, I think is just feels like hell on earth. That's really, there's no other way to describe it. It sucks, and it just feels like pain all the time. He just feels so helpless and powerless and out of control. And I think that there were more commonalities than differences. Both of them were warriors. So, if there was a new treatment, if there was a new drug, they were like, give it to me, whatever. And, they both really, really fought very hard until the end. So I think that, both of them had just quite similar experiences, and both types of cancer were just extremely aggressive. And I think that's really what shakes me still every day, where, one of my major fears, and I'm not afraid of a lot anymore because I feel like there's so much that's happened in my life. But one of my major fears is cancer, and this tragic death before your time. So my
Mm.
mom was 54, my father had just turned 60, and they had so many more. They were so vibrant. I felt like they were so vibrant 6, 7, 8 months before they passed, and then they were just gone. And I think that's, it's one of my major fears. And cancer is just one of those things that you just don't have control over.
Absolutely. And thanks for sharing that. I feel similarly. So thank you for your honesty there. I'm curious if there's something that has come up for you around your own health. And are there any changes or thoughts you've had around mortality, specifically surrounding health? Certainly your bars, and curious what comes up for you around that.
Oh my goodness, so many things. So yes, the bars are definitely one thing, because we don't add any, we have no added sugar in the bars. They're super clean. There's a lot of corners that are cut when you enter the food and beverage space. And I think a lot of companies settle for using ingredients like natural flavors and lecithins and emulsifiers just because it may change the consistency of something. And it was so critical that I remove all of them for my own health, for my family's health, for everyone else. I really want to, bring to the forefront how, especially if you're eating something every day and incorporating it into your daily routine, I want people to feel so comfortable with the ingredients that are in the product. And, it's one thing, like, it's not that I have cut added sugar out. Like when I want a cookie, I'm going to eat a cookie. It's totally fine.
Yeah.
But it's really, BTR bar is meant to be something that you can eat on the go and feel good about every day. So it definitely impacted the recipes and, how I think about my own health. But it probably has actually made me a little bit extra paranoid, where my poor husband, and I probably should go to therapy for this. I definitely feel paranoid about, well, this ache and pain, this, well, what is this bump? Like literally everything I think about, I'm like, what if it's cancer? It's the first thought that crosses my mind. Could be a headache. What if it's an aneurysm? Like I just think the worst. And I'm trying to get a little better with that, especially my husband's super laid back and he has not had any tragedy happen. So he kind of thinks a little bit more positively and it's just a headache, probably take Excedrin and then you'll feel better. And that helps balance me out, because if it was just me, I would probably just be, going on all the what if scenarios possible. So, but it's actually impacted where we want to permanently reside. And, we're focused on living and, creating this life for ourselves in a state that has good healthcare. And that's been so critical. And, I have a great primary care doctor now, and making sure that, California is an amazing state for healthcare. And even though it's expensive, I tell my husband, I'm like, we have to stay where there's good healthcare, where there's good hospitals. We're in San Francisco. There's nationally ranked hospitals for oncology practice. And it's, he's like, oh, I get it. Because he was in the room when my father passed, holding my hand, holding his hand. So he's seen it now. But previously that would never have been a decision that he would have made for himself. And if my parents were still alive, I'd probably be like, sure, I can live anywhere. But now it's definitely my health and, how I take care of myself, and the resources and access is so critical, and something that I want to bring to the forefront in the company as well.
Beautiful. I love that. I appreciate that. And it's such a good reminder that, well, it's very nuanced, because the accessibility, I think, is a huge issue in our country for healthcare. And yes, we sometimes forget that there are situations that if you pay for it, you can access, where in some places you can't even pay for it and get it. So there's a lot of nuanced issues here, but thank you for that reminder. I resonate with what you're saying about overanalyzing symptoms. I'm so that way. Understandably, I see where we are both coming from. It's interesting because I agree, what's the middle ground, but I do find that some of my friends that just aren't concerned at all about these things is, an interesting perspective of, like, they don't even think about anything happening to their parents, much less to them. And I don't want them to overanalyze necessarily the way we do, but I do hope that more people can have some awareness. We're not all going to live forever. People's parents are going to have something happen to them eventually, unfortunately, for people like you, much too soon. And why are some of my friends in their like mid 30s being like shocked when like an uncle died? I mean, it's going to happen, right?
I hear you. Yeah. I totally resonate. It's a natural course of events. And I try not to be, naive about things, but it's when it's before its time where it's just so sad. And it's, right now, I haven't told you this yet, right now, where my little baby, my puppy, my dog, has been diagnosed with cancer last year and had an amputation. We saved his life. He was just re-diagnosed, and that's why we had to reschedule. He was just re-diagnosed a few weeks ago, and it's been hell on earth, because dogs can't talk, and he's just my little baby, and he's only 6 years. He just turned 6, and he's had such a hard life. His leg was broken. He was abused. We rescued him back in New York, my husband and I, and he's literally the glue that holds the family together. So it's just, once again, like, if he was 12 or even 10, I'd be like, okay, he's had, this long, fulfilling life, but this is the hand that you're dealt. And it's, that's why I started the company. I was listening to one of the episodes. I forgot the guest that I forgot her name. She was talking about making her bucket list. When you are faced with your immortality at a young age, you think about the things that you want to do. And as much as I'd like to say, like, I do, I want to travel, the two things that I want, and I think my parents would want for me as well, is I wanted to start a company. My parents always knew that I wanted to own my own business, do something. And my mom probably didn't have as much of an idea of what it would be. But my father actually incorporated the company before he passed. He worked in trademarks
Wow.
and legal, and he incorporated the company as Better Brownie Bites. So that's the legal name, and said, I want you to do something with this. I know you've got this in you. And it's, it felt like fate that he did that, and then started the company in the middle of a pandemic. We'll get there, and start a family. So those are the two things that like are really on my bucket list, and that's what I'm striving to do. But it's, you have all these happy moments, but they always feel just a little bittersweet without, there's still that hole in your heart. But I feel their presence, and I know they're here with me.
That is so beautiful, and
Thank you.
I'm very sorry to hear about your dog. Of course,
You're
you have
welcome.
to have that going on with all you've been through. Poor little angel. What's your dog's name, by the way?
His name is Bubba.
Bubba, cutie. I'm sorry he was re-diagnosed. That's really tough. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to hear that, and
Thank
thank
you.
you for sharing.
He really doesn't have any symptoms. So I'm so grateful. He is a warrior dog. So we're going through chemo, going through radiation, doing the whole thing all over again with my dog. And yeah, and we're going to, keep him going as long as possible. And we're also, the quality of life is super important as well. So we take him for stroller rides along the Embarcadero because he only has 3 legs, so he can't walk that far.
Oh,
So, and I look at him, and he's so brave. He's having needle biopsies in his lungs, and he is just such a trooper. And I think to myself, okay, if my dog can do this, then I gotta show up every day.
oh my gosh, little cutie Bubba. Cutie batoots, little dogs. Dogs are the best. Okay, the bucket list. I think that episode was probably Sam Hale. Did she talk about wolves? She like does crazy stuff with
Wolves
wolves.
and
Okay,
sharks,
okay.
yes. I
Sam
was
Hale,
so
yes.
inspired. I was like, I want to go and cuddle with a wolf right now. Like, I do not have that much courage at all. And I took so much from that episode because I'm like, I got to do some of this shit.
Right? Okay. I think she posted on her Instagram today about wolves, by the way. Okay. Anyways, okay, let's talk about some fun things. I'm so excited to introduce your bars to the audience and hear all that good stuff. I mean, starting a company, what a dream for so many people. Would love if you could walk through some of the timeline into how you got here. And of course, we got to hear about the flavors, your favorite one. I love the brownie chocolate situation. I'm so excited.
Yes. So the timeline, so interesting. So I had mentioned that I had started making these little things I called Better Bites when my parents were in the hospital. And I brought them for myself because my own nutrition was suffering. And then I was like, oh, my parents loved them. That's great. The doctors, nurses, everyone would eat these little energy balls. And I have a background in food studies and biochemistry. So I would, I've been taking like cordyceps and reishi mushroom and all these superfoods and adaptogens for years now. And I would put them in these little energy balls, and people loved them. And I was surprised because I was like, why? Like I feel like everyone has a bar or bite or snack company. Like, why is this a thing? And I saved the recipes. I said, you know what? I think I could do something with this maybe down the line. We'll see. And when my parents passed, so when my mom passed, I would just like shut everyone out essentially. And then when my father passed, I knew I just needed to open my heart and really build a support system because my entire immediate family was gone. My grandparents, everyone's gone. And not having any siblings, it's definitely been challenging. I'm so grateful for my husband. I have a good support system of friends and colleagues, but I just felt alone because my entire immediate family was gone. My grandparents, everyone's gone. And not having any siblings, it's definitely been challenging. I'm so grateful for my husband. I have a good support system of friends and colleagues, but I just felt alone. And I've always thrown myself into work. But when my parents had passed, I wanted to be in a stable environment, have some stability. I was working in education. I decided to go back to school for my second master's. And this was like an
Wow.
extension of nutrition. Yeah. So I was like, let me try it.
What was your first
And
master's, by the way? We need to hear about your degrees because we are
yes.
loving this. Yes.
So I never finished my second master's, but my first master's was in higher education and college student affairs. So I worked in universities, and I loved it for a very long time. And I still love, working with students and being able to be, a role model and a presence and building community. But it was the little things that just irritated me when, I worked at the University of Delaware, Rutgers University, and NYU, where I went to school. And it was NYU that really I hated my experience
Uh-oh.
because the students were so, I hate to say it, the students were just super entitled. And even when I was a student there, I had a lot of friends that were super entitled, and it was challenging because they would come to you with all these crazy things that they need. And it was a little much. And, you're on duty and there were a lot of suicide watches, and it was tough being in an emotional state with, my father had just passed. I was like, I got to do something different. So I was offered an internship at a supplement company, and it was a startup. I love supplements. I was like, okay, let's see what this is. And so I took the internship, and it turned into a full-time job. I was the second hire and grew the company from the ground up for 4 years. And during the pandemic, I was starting to get restless. The company was changing. Our founder had some different ideas than the vision that I had for the company. And I had grown it for so long, it became like my baby. I said, okay, this is like my baby. But it's not really, it's not my company. It's not my story. And I have a story to tell. Why don't I just do this? And I literally quit. Most people were furloughed, or I said, I don't even know what I'm doing right now. My husband was furloughed, and I have not paid myself in months, and we're just going with it and seeing how it works. But yeah, and I literally resigned and I started the company, and everything came together. It was shocking. I went back to this Google Doc where I had all these recipes, and I said, okay, I'm going to take this to a food scientist and let's see what we can do. And I knew the branding, I knew the name. I spent all of my weekends trying to figure out, exactly how I want to position this, what really makes us different. If I was going to bring something to market in this very oversaturated category, it's got to be good. So it's got to be delicious. Texture has to be good, but the ingredients have to be the cleanest and has to have no sugar. That was just so critical for me.
Popping in to remind you about BTR Bar. You're already reminded because we're listening to it, but special shout out to these bars that have 7+ key superfoods and adaptogens, powered by plants, gluten, dairy, soy, and whey-free, keto, paleo, non-GMO, no junk, and registered dietitian approved. If you want to try the sampler box or any of these yummy flavors, you can use code LAUGHTER10 for 10% off site-wide. So you head to eatbtrbar.com/discount/laughter10. Again, that's eatbtrbar.com/discount/laughter10. I will leave that info in the show notes, and I'll throw it up on some IG stories. Bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum.
Was the no added sugar. Like I said, not a sugar hater, but just don't need to have 20, 25 grams of sugar in this little bar. Like most people eat protein bars as an in-between snack. So that was the purpose, is to give something better for that snacking occasion. And that's how it all came together. And we launched at the end of September. So soft launched, and we did a small production run. So we're having a lot of inventory issues right now. We're constantly selling out. So good things, bad things, because we need more product. But yeah, it's been a journey, but I'm so excited. I named the company BTR Bar because I feel like I feel my parents, and the color of the packaging, everything. I just feel like they were here helping me make all the decisions.
Oh my goodness. Well, huge congratulations for
Thank
getting this
you.
all done. Yeah, the packaging is extraordinary, by the way.
Thank
The
you.
website looks so good. The bars
Oh,
look
thank
so
you.
good. It's just so professional. And the fact that I'm looking at the website right now while I say this, so LOL. But you are so cool because you've positioned yourself in such a unique position. The fact that these are keto, paleo, non-GMO, gluten, dairy, soy, and whey-free, and have superfoods and adaptogens. Can you share a little bit more about what it was like working with the food scientist to get to this place? Because that is an extraordinarily clean list. That's huge.
Yeah, I'm a big pain in the ass. So when food scientists say like, no, that can't be done, I'm like, we're going to find a way to do that. So it was, and it still is hard as we create new flavors, and we're actually launching a new flavor. We're launching peanut butter chocolate chip bliss in 3.5 weeks, 4 weeks. So super excited about that. It is so challenging because there are so many companies that have these like fun, funky flavors like raspberry cheesecake. And for us, a raspberry cheesecake is very challenging to achieve because we don't use raspberry cheesecake natural flavoring that's made in a lab. So everything has to be, literally do like 23 iterations of R&D. So the R&D process is super time consuming. So when customers, and I love the feedback that customers give us like, oh, can you make this flavor? Can you make this flavor? It is a lot of money and it is a lot of time, but we're coming at you. We're going to try to make that flavor, but it's so challenging because it's just the time to make the product, source all the ingredients. It's definitely a process, but it was really critical for me. And, there's some things in there that might change as we expand. So not all the bars may be keto friendly. We might use dates in one of our bars moving forward, just to give a little bit of variety. But my non-negotiables are no natural flavors. So no junk, no shit in the bar, no added sugar. So that's something I'm really trying to, if we do have added sugar in one bar, maybe a gram, but no more than that, just so people feel comfortable eating this. 3 times, 4 times a day. We have customers that literally eat like 5-6 bars a day. So
Bless
which is just
that's who we like. Thank you, customers. We like you. Yes.
Yeah. So happy to hear that, and makes them feel good. That's really the whole goal. So we'll always have superfoods and adaptogens in the product, and we're going to try to, it will always be clean label, but some of the things, we'll see as we go and gather some data, but I really wanted to start with our 3 core SKUs, checking all the right boxes.
Wonderful. I feel like it's so lovely when people have this clear vision and they're able to execute it. And like you put the cart before the horse. You knew what you wanted and you were able to do that. And then, like you said, if things evolve and change, here we go. But I think it's so special to have that vision because not everyone does. Like, do you feel just so proud of yourself? I don't know. That's cheesy. I just feel like I'm proud of you. I'm like, you go, girl. We're just meeting, but I'm excited for you.
I am. I think it's so interesting because, like I said, it's just I go back to these moments. Like sometimes, like, if we have a really good day, I'm like, I do feel proud of myself, but there's just like, I wish I could call my parents. Like I wish my father loved business and would love to talk about this. And I just feel like there's always something missing. It's something really shook me. Back in November when Biden and Kamala Harris were elected, Joe Biden obviously has gone through so much tragedy in his life. And one of the newscasters commented that, he looks so happy when he was giving his speech and so proud of himself, but there's this, like something's like crying inside of him. But he knows, like, he misses Bo, he misses his wife, and it's, but you have to move on, right? It's, you have to live your life. That's what they would want. But there's always like a piece of you that just wishes that there was something else. Like I think about that all the time. My husband and I had mentioned earlier, we got married in October, and
huge congrats, by the way. Amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. Super small wedding. Literally, it was a COVID wedding. And we had the wedding because we wanted our dog to be there. So we had it outside. There were literally like 5 people, and we had our extended families on Zoom because they're all back east. And it just, when people ask like, oh, how was your wedding? Like, it must have been so beautiful. And it was beautiful. It was, a special day. The whole day, I was just like, miss my mom. Like my mom should be here. My mom especially, because she was obsessed with planning my wedding. There's always a part of you that's missing, but I feel like they're here, and that's what I try to hold on to as much as possible. I don't know if it's a coping mechanism or not, but hold on to that as much as possible and move forward to try to make them proud and really crush the business.
Wonderful. That is so well said, Ashley. And that's so true. It's so honest. It's like even all these great conversations here on the pod. It's like there's always going to be the underlying like sad times at Ridgemont High. Like when someone either that I know or comes on the pod or emails me or something, I'm like, yes, you are a fit for the pod. I'm so sorry. Like, sorry to hear you're a fit for the pod. You know what I mean? So thanks for the honesty there. I wanted to shout out your flavors: cinnamon cookie dough, dark chocolate brownie, my favorite, and cherry chocolate chip. I was wondering if you could share a little bit more about your inspo for the flavors, or if you have something that is the best seller or your personal favorite, you know, any fun little insider things like that would be fun to hear about.
Sure. So the best seller is definitely a tie between cinnamon cookie dough and dark chocolate brownie. And the dark chocolate brownie, I have to send you new ones. We actually reformulated and made it a little bit softer and fluffier. It literally tastes like a brownie. So excited about that one. And my favorite flavor literally changes every day. I eat all three of them throughout the day typically, but I usually go for the cinnamon cookie dough or the dark chocolate brownie just because I like, it's sweet without being sweet. And the inspo for the flavors came from the ingredients themselves. So, I took my background in food studies and nutrition and thought like, okay, what does maca do? What does cinnamon do? What do tart cherries do? And, looked at those functional benefits. And then, with this food scientist, and I also worked with a personal chef to really create this synergistic blend that tasted delicious because the ingredients are literally at the forefront in the center, but they also have that purpose as well. So I always try to think like, the peanut butter flavor is something that is brand new for the company and hasn't even launched, but was crowdsourced. So that was something that our community wanted. So, I conducted a ton of different surveys and peanut butter was the number one flavor.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, I wasn't originally going to bring a peanut butter to market because I know people have peanut allergies and I just wanted to be, mindful of that. But, even our customers that are like, it's okay, we just won't eat that one, but, make another one. You have three already, like keep it coming, but just don't have peanut butter in those. And everyone is excited about this flavor. So I can't wait to launch it. But yeah, we really go to our community for feedback. So everything from the little details, I wasn't going to put chocolate chips in there because I like my bars to have very simple texture, not like different types of texture. But everyone voted for chocolate chips. So we do Instagram polls. We have a whole brand ambassador community. They helped us pick out the packaging and the color profiles. So they really get involved with it. So they feel like they have some ownership in the company and, it can really help pick what's next for the company.
That is so smart. And congrats for getting that all together. I know there's like a lot of team member things, hiring all fancy stuff to get that in place. And I think that's so smart that you're being honest. You're like, hey, this wasn't my instinct and or preference. And look at the power of the community because these are the people paying. Let's, address that. And I think that's so important for all businesses of each size to take that into consideration. As there are people with small, whether it's businesses or projects or dreams of starting one, could we speak to that just for a moment? Do you have advice on how you got started? Could you talk about how it was, what it was like what it was like hiring a team member and how you got to the place that you're at? Because that's a big deal. I mean, that's fantastic.
Thank you. And I can absolutely speak to it. I've got tons of advice. I love to talk about entrepreneurship all the time, day and night. I have actually not hired my first team member. So I am a solopreneur and it doesn't seem like that. And that's one of my goals. There are some companies that like to be small and kind of stay in the shadows and then kind of just expand quietly. I have a story to tell. So I have to tell my parents' story. Like that's what drives me to get up. The fact that they were able to taste the first iteration of these little energy balls before it became BTR Bar. I need to be able to tell that story. And because they're not here, I need their legacy to live on and show how amazing they are and have that mantra of be bold, tenacious, and resilient out there to everyone. So I have not hired a team member yet. We will be hiring hopefully by the end of 2021. So super excited about that. But I do have a super, super clear vision of, who we want to hire, how we want to hire, the roles that we're looking for, which is exciting. My husband is still furloughed, so he has been able to help. He kind of handles all fulfillment. His favorite thing is packing up all the products and then taking them to the post office. That's his little fun task for the day. So he definitely is helpful and not an entrepreneurial bone in his body. Like he's like, I don't really want to talk about business. That's cool that you want to do this. I support you. I believe in you, but hire out when you need to. I am not your resource for that, except for fun operation stuff. So I'm like, okay. So yeah, I mean, when it comes to advice, I think the first piece of advice that I would give anyone that wants to start a business is don't wait until it's perfect, because then it's too late. And as a perfectionist, a chronic perfectionist, it is very hard to take my own advice. And I do feel like I started the company just a little too late. I would have loved to have started before the pandemic, but everything happens for a reason. So I, needed the pandemic to really realize, like, life is so precious. Like, what am I waiting for? Like, things are not going to get better unless I make them better. So I definitely say start before you're ready. And I always say, like, there's always a yes on the other side of no. So if you have an idea and people are like, oh no, I don't, there's too many bars out there. There's too many of this, like, don't do it. Someone's going to say yes if you have the passion and the why, and you actually are doing something because it comes from within, as opposed to like, oh, a business is going to make you money. Business is like not going to make you money. So most of the time when you're starting out, especially, most founders barely pay themselves, if they pay themselves for years. And that's the goal, that's the direction that we're going. I do not want to pay myself, because I want to reinvest it right back into the business and really grow this as much as possible. And then later on, maybe you get something, but it's really because you have a passion for it. So I always say, go for it.
Beautiful. I love that. Go for it. And it is so true about starting before you're ready. I completely resonate with what you're saying about that, even just from doing podcasts and other stuff. Do you love how I just like went and just like assumed you had a team? I was like, tell me about your team, because you're just that mage and you're just like present that way. So we love it. And also it's funny, you get it. There's always something. So like, quick tidbit for me, I was really actually pleased with my, let's say, timing, because I did come out before the pandemic and I felt like these subjects were relevant to the pandemic. I was like, wow, that worked out. And then yet I had non-negotiables about sound quality. I was like a super, super stickler about it. And I recorded in fancy studios and I was like, that is how we're doing it. And then of course, that is so not what was going to continue. And you know what? We learned a lot. And it's like, there were some episodes that were really, really frustrating in terms of quality when I was first starting figuring out remote. And I was like, this is pissing me off. Like, I know a lot about sound. I did a lot of research. I made sure that this was going to be great. And I was like, you know what? There's a few episodes that their sound was whatever. And it's like, you put it out and you learn and you grow. And like, we're all going to have some kind of setback, right? It's just like being flexible, I think, in these solo spaces.
Your sound is amazing. You sound incredible. I hope I sound as good as you. I made sure to get a mic and invest in a mic, because I knew I wanted to tell my story. I was like, gotta get a microphone, because I do, every single podcast I'm on, the host is always like, I hope you have a microphone. And if I had my own podcast, I would want my guests to have mics too. So I hear you.
Totally. No, you sound great. That's a Yeti, right? I can tell from.
It is.
Yeah,
yes.
Love it. That's such a great mic, especially for what you're doing. Like, but anyways, great job. You invested, you're doing it. You're amazing. Is there a resource that comes to mind that inspired you in some way pertaining to grief or entrepreneurship? It could be a podcast, it could be a book, it could be a course, anything that comes to mind that was inspiration for you around your journey.
Oh my goodness. Around entrepreneurship, I have a million and one. So I'll get there. Around grief, I don't. And I wish I did. And I think this is where I wish I had mentioned earlier, I wish I had gone to therapy. And it's still something every day where I'm like, I have health insurance. Let me just go find a therapist. And I constantly, like every time I start the search, I never feel like I find the right partner, because I feel like I am willing to do the work. I work a lot on myself. So I have a gratitude journal. I try to, focus on, and this is not like every day, but when I feel like it, I have it. I have mantras written up all around my office to try to keep me focused and, really, I don't want to say moving past the grief, but very like highly functioning. But I do think that therapy can be so, so helpful, but it's all about finding the right therapist. And I never went to therapy a day in my life. And I think I'm still looking for a good partner. So if any therapists are listening, you can contact me at BTR.bar on Instagram. I want your help. And I think it's really important because it's a good way to get out your thoughts and get out your emotions and also continue to work on yourself and have someone hold you accountable. Whereas I look to my husband a lot because I talk out loud and I just share my journey out loud. Whoever's around, if they hear me, that's fine. Like sometimes I'm not even talking to my husband, I'm just talking out loud. And he's like, Ashley, this is like really deep. Maybe you should talk to someone about this. And it's like, I was talking to the wall. So I do think that is I think therapy is a great resource and I need to work on that myself. When it comes to entrepreneurship, I tell all young budding entrepreneurs like myself to learn everything possible yourself and then figure out if you need to hire out. So, there are a lot of entrepreneurs that in the beginning, especially in a very like capital intensive business like food, that hire all of these agencies and all of these people to, high level, senior level people, which if you have the funding, go for it. BTR Bar is self-funded, so that's not necessarily in the cards for us. But I think it's really, it grounds you in the business and it brings you to every aspect of it when you just have to learn everything yourself. So I run our Facebook and Instagram ads. I run our Instagram account. Eventually all of these things will have to be delegated and I'm ready to do that. But I want to make sure I know all of the working pieces first before figuring out who's the best person to hire for that. So I subscribe to everything. I invest in my professional development, buy books, listen to podcasts, invest in courses. I literally have lists and lists. I think for anyone that has like an e-commerce business that's in the CPG space, I highly recommend Shopify as the platform that they use and, signing up for all their free courses. There's just so much free stuff out there, listening to tons of different podcasts. I mean, now Clubhouse is all the rage. I am on Clubhouse. I dabble. I think there's some people that spend a lot of time in Clubhouse running the business day in and day out. It's, when working 14, 15 hours, I probably am not going to be on Clubhouse unless I dedicated time to it. But it is a really, if you're just answering emails or doing some customer service or packing out orders, it's good to just have on in the background because you just get these tidbits of information because there's just so many smart, amazing people out there and tapping that network is really important.
Loving that. Love a Clubhouse moment. I know, I feel you. It's all good, but it's like, we can't all do everything. I feel like, if it's inspiring to like jump on there, like it is for you and I, like do it. But also, yeah, there's some people on 8 hours a day. I'm like, I'm like doing things. I have to like actually do my things. Like you're literally packaging and selling your product. So I like the word balance. When I think about new social media apps, I think balance. I will dabble, I will do, and I will also not do. Yay, balance. Yeah.
Totally.
And I love that you plugged therapy pre-going. I mean, I'm excited. You're going to be like the greatest client. You're like, I'm self-aware. I've been through things. Let's discuss. So yay.
Yes, exactly. I know what I want to talk about. I have my list. I'm just looking for the right partner. It's like picking your partner in life. I want to have a good relationship. And I've interviewed some therapists before and it just didn't seem to sync. It's like interviewing your doctor and being your own advocate and, it's got to work.
100%. I will just quickly mention that I've been doing BetterHelp. If that's a vibe or of interest at any point, it's all online, which I thought would be very bizarre. I was resistant, but I found it was the best way to like interview a few, like you're saying. It was like less of investment. Obviously you're not driving anywhere. So BetterHelp I think is a good platform. Yeah.
That's great. I'm open. I want to know all of the things. So it's, I'm sure you feel this way. Mm-hmm. It's sometimes like I can go through life and I don't want to say fake the conversations, but sometimes I feel like I'm just, nodding along at other people's problems. And I don't want to put them in air quotes, and everyone's got a battle to fight and everyone's battles are different. So if my parents hadn't passed or had gotten sick, my battles might still be like boy problems and whatnot. And, it's so your eyes open though when you just lose someone so close to you, and didn't seem things that didn't seem important now seem important to you. And it's just so interesting when you sit with people who have never experienced that before. It's nice to be in the company. That's why I've been loving and like obsessed with your podcast, because it's just nice to, I honestly feel like you and your guests are talking to me. I feel like, we're in this club that's shitty, and there's like camaraderie there, and you just got to stick together.
Oh, Ashley, thank you. You're saying all the most lovely things. I'm like, thank you. And I'm resonating and I'm just loving it. And yeah, it is a weird club. And it's like, as we get older, more and more people will join. And yet I don't know about you. I still am 10 years out of my dad, and I don't have a super, super, super close friend that has lost their dad, like still. So like, it's still a unique thing, even over time. So, we're all just on the journey. I feel like this was such a wonderful conversation. I'm so glad we got to connect. Is there anything else that you wish that I had asked you, or last closing thoughts? Everything you're saying is lovely, but wanted to give it back to you.
This is just so much fun. And I just feel like this strong sense of community, which is great.
Where can people find you and connect with you online? And most importantly, buy your awesome bars.
Oh, thank you. So you can message us at BTR.bar on Instagram. We're on Facebook. I'm on Clubhouse as Ashley Nickelsen. And then you can come to our website, which is eatbtrbar.com, and you can take a look at all the bars. We've got some fun recipes. We work with our registered dietitians and nutritionists, so they're all on there as well, with writing fun articles. So there's lots of fun things happening on the website.
It's a glorious website. It's very organized. It's clean. It's easy to read. We like the colors. We love a good website. I would recommend the sampler box. You guys still do that, right? Okay.
Yes, we do.
Yes. That's like the perfect way to try all the flavors. So yummy. A little bite of each. Again, I love the brownie. I love them all. Just, they're all great. And they're so they're so healthy, which is very, very impressive that you're able to match the taste with the flavor with the healthy things. I was like, I don't think I know any bars that are this clean, even though there's like a lot of bars. Is this the cleanest bar ever? Like, what's
Thank you. That is exactly the question that I want people to ask. So it's so funny because people are always like, but how could there be any white space? I'm like, literally everything that exists on the market is essentially the same. And there's some variants, and there's some companies that do okay. But I don't really like to settle for okay. It's got to be the best. So.
Love that, Ashley. You are doing the best. You're doing the things. Thank you for being here. I'm excited for people to try your fabulous bars and to learn more about you. And this was so fun. I just feel so energized. I love it.
Thank you so much. Me too. I had such a great time.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you for starting an awesome company.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. I'm so excited to listen, and thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and tell the story.
Bloopers, 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 bloopers. Wait, hold on. There might be a plane. You know what? Okay, my 1 second. My heater just turned on. I'm going to turn it off. Sorry about that, Ash. 1 second.
No worries. I love it.
How we roll in 2021.
This is good. I'll take a sip of water.
LOL. So sorry, Ash. Can you even believe this is how we roll? I was like, I think there's a plane. And then I was like, my air heat just turned on and it was loud. So anyways.